Our speaker this morning is a gentleman who bridges all generations. Born in Carabel, Florida in 1911. Get that? John O'Neill was an adolescent during the roaring 20s, and believe me, he's still roaring in the 90s. Buck O'Neill was destined to become one of the nation's great ambassadors, not only for baseball, but for humanity. A truly compassionate man, he's the kind of person we'd all love to have as a member of our team in our middle schools. John O'Neill was not allowed to attend the public schools in his hometown of Sarasota, Florida. But you know what? He was invited to the graduation ceremony of that school in 1994. And not only did he receive his diploma, they named their stadium the Buck O'Neill Stadium. Buck earned much of his early recognition as an all-star first baseman in the Negro Leagues. As a player-manager with the Kansas City Monarchs, Buck played with and against the best athletes in the world. His baseball career did not end in the mid-50s when that league folded. He has continued to serve the game he loves so much. He was a manager for Jackie Robinson when Jackie became the first African-American player in Major League Baseball. Buck was also responsible for the first major league contracts of superstars like Ernie Banks, Lou Brock, Lee Smith, and Joe Carter, and many more. Buck O'Neill was the first African-American to become a coach in Major League Baseball when he coached for the Chicago Cubs in the early 1960s. He continues to work in baseball as a scout for the Kansas City Royals, with the Youth RBI program, as a member of the Hall of Fame Selection Committee in Cooperstown, New York, and as chairman of the board of the Negro Leagues Museum in Kansas City. Buck O'Neill has made hundreds of appearances throughout the nation. He was featured in Ken Burns' TV series on baseball. Recently, he was a guest on David Letterman's show. Buck's wife, Ora, who passed away in 1997, was an excellent teacher for over 30 years in the Kansas City school system. Ora was a tremendous model for her students. So is Buck. Buck O'Neill has walked in their shoes. I only wish that more people could walk in his shoes. Mr. O'Neill recently spoke to the inmates of a prison near Leavenworth. I observed that speech, and I witnessed his providing a ray of hope and spirit for those inmates. From the bottom of my heart, I wish that each of those convicts could have heard Buck's message of hope before they committed their crimes. I want to take a few additional seconds to introduce the Buck I know with the kind of material that cannot be printed in your program booklet. We'll do it with some visuals. Here's Buck at the podium giving a message. He's great in front of all audiences, from children to people of his generation, although there aren't many left about that age. Players that come through Kansas City always want to meet and greet Buck, whether they're new rookies who are in their first year in the major leagues or whether they're superstars, such as one of the brightest stars in today's game, Ken Griffey Jr. Buck also signed people like Ernie Banks. Probably a few Cub fans out here, right? All right. Mr. Cub, Ernie Banks. Cal Ripken wanted to meet and greet Buck O'Neill, and here's a photograph taken just this year with Cal Ripken Jr. Certainly two legends of two different eras. But the Buck I know the most is the kind of Buck that will go out into an audience when he's speaking and recognize that certain people can't make it up and shake his hand. Certain people can't get his autograph. Here he is with a blind man in an audience and going out into the crowd and greeting that young man and his helper dog. And also at a school assembly, greeting a young man who's disabled and in a wheelchair who can't come up and shake his hand. And finally, at a school, what's that in Buck's mouth? It's a lollipop or something, a Tootsie Roll or something. So he's kind of an adolescent even though he's 86 and a half years old. I hope these photographs have helped portray the Buck O'Neill, the person. The title of Buck's autobiography is I Was Right on Time. And now is the right time to welcome our cleanup speaker. Please step up to the plate, Mr. Buck O'Neill.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You got a lot of doing. Standing up there, I'm going to talk about you. I tell you, this is a wonderful time for me. Really, I've been a lot of places, and I've done a lot of things that I like doing. I hit the home run. I hit the grand slam home run. I scored the winning touchdown. Yes, I've had a hole-in-one in golf. I've done a lot of things I really like doing, but I tell you what, I'd rather be right here, right now, talking with you than any place I've ever been. I tell you what, LL Cool J said, education is one of the most important things you can ever do for yourself. It's outstanding. It's remarkable. It's like a garden growing in your mind. It continuously growing. But I tell you what, you have to water it. And this is what you're doing now. You're watering that garden that's in your mind. And you will keep doing it as long as you live. Because when you stop learning, you're through. So to come up here and talk to you about my experiences and the things that happened in my life, if you came, you thought you were going to hear an old man cry about the things that happened to him, you might as well go out, because that's not me. Yeah, as the book says, I was right on time. And I'm right on time here this morning talking with you. I met some people, some wonderful people here. And I met one of my homies, Panama City. Been to my hometown, Dr. Gautier. That's what we say in Louisiana. But anyway, this has been a wonderful trip. This trip through life. It began with me in a little town, Carabel, Florida. I remember it well. And Doc told me it hasn't changed too much, because I haven't been there in maybe 70-some years. But this is what I'm here for, to tell you about the life before integration. I'm going to tell you some of the things that happened to your grandparents long ago, and I'm going to tell you how they did overcome the hardships and the different things. Yes, this is America. And when you look at me, you're looking at an American. That's me, just like you. American through and through. So no man can tell me anything different. Yes. And I'm going to tell you some stories about the great ball players that I played with, that I played against. But let me tell you first about the Negro Leagues. I played in the Negro Leagues. I played with and against some of the greatest athletes that ever lived in the Negro League. I eulogized Satchel Paige, and one of the writers said, Buck, it's too bad Satchel didn't get a chance to play with the greatest ball players in the world. I say, who is it to say that he didn't play with and against the greatest ball players in the world? They just happen to have been black. That was me. The Negro Leagues was nothing like the Bingo Long story or the Soul of the Game. The Negro League was the third largest black business in this country. First, black insurances, Omaha, the other big insurances, they will only insure us 10 or 15 cents policy, just enough to bury us. But Atlanta Life, North Carolina Mutual, these insurances insured our homes, our farms, yes, our crops. They made millions. Next, Madam C.J. Walker in cosmetology. Madam C.J. Walker actually had a school of cosmetology in every principal city in the United States. She made millions. Madam C.J. Walker was doing that hair like Dr. Leaks 75 years ago. So Madam C.J. Walker made millions. Next was Negro League Baseball. All you needed, really, was a bus, a couple of sets of uniforms, and you could have 20 of the best athletes that ever lived. And they made money. Now, we didn't make too much, but the owners made it all right. Because when I came to the Kansas City Monarchs in 1938, my salary was $100 a month, and I had $1 a day for meal money. Now, I don't want you to, don't look down on that $1 a day that I had, because this was during the Depression. So I could come down in the Rose Room at the Streets Hotel for breakfast. I could have ham and eggs, cup of coffee, 25 cents. I only ate 2 meals a day. For dinner, I could have a Kansas City strip, a baked potato, some string beans, and a dessert for 35 cents. I tell you, I smoked cigarettes at the time. I hope you all stopped smoking, but I smoked Camel cigarettes at the time. I could get a package of Camel cigarettes for 15 cents. And I could go to the Gem Theater at the matinee for 10 cents. That was 85 cents. I had 15 cents left out of that $1 to play with. So, had a wonderful, wonderful time playing there. To show you what it was like to play with the Kansas City Monarchs, a boy from the Sarah Fields in Sarasota, Florida, to go to the Kansas City Monarchs was like a white boy from the textile mills in South Carolina or from the cotton fields in Georgia or Mississippi going to the New York Yanks. It's all the same. I was going to play with the great Kansas City Monarchs. And you should have seen Kansas City. 18th and Vine. Here I go. Oh, man. I tell you, I could come downstairs on Sunday morning at the Streets Hotel. Somebody say, "Hey, Buck, come over here and sit with me." Could have been a Duke Ellington. Oh, Sarah Vaughan. You understand what I'm saying to you? Or Joe Louis. This was 18th and Vine, and I tell you what, when we were in town on Sunday morning, 11 o'clock services, our services, they set it back to 10 o'clock so they could come to the ball game, and they came to the ball game looking good. Yeah, to see the Kansas City Monarchs. So we had a great time. But I tell you what, it was a good time, and it was a bad time. Segregation was a horrible thing, and I'm so glad you didn't have to put up with it. It was a terrible time. But I tell you what, integration did something to us, because we don't own as much now as we did then. The man had the Streets Hotel was black. The man had the restaurant in the Streets Hotel was black. The man had the barbershop in the Streets Hotel was black. Yes. But now, no, couldn't compete. with the big motels and the hotels. See, I couldn't stay at the Mulebach Hotel in Kansas City, but I could stay at the streets. The streets weren't as really elaborate as the Mulebach Hotel, but the beds were clean, and the food might have been better because the best cooks in the world then were black. That's true. So I've had a good life. I really have. And they said, Buck, you were just too soon. You didn't get a chance to play Major League Baseball. I say, I played Major League Baseball, but just happened to have been black. See, I went to Harlem as a kid, and I'd never seen so many black people in all my life. And actually, and I went there, I had 2 suits. Oh man, I was looking good, I thought. And when I got to Harlem, the boys in Harlem wasn't wearing the kind of suits I had. I went to the pawnbroker, I said, Mr. Pawnbroker, will you take my 2 suits and give me 1 suit like these boys wearing? So he gave me a zoot suit. And I took it back to Sarasota looking good. So actually, this was a good time in my life because it was quite an experience for me. And then, out of all the things I learned in baseball, the people that I knew in baseball, I imagine one of the most remarkable persons that I've ever known, that I'd ever met, had to been the pear-toed boy, born in Georgia, raised in California. His name was Jackie Robinson. Jackie. A lot of people say that Jackie wasn't the best ball player in the Negro Leagues. Well, he wasn't at the time because of the fact that Jackie only played in 1945, 1 year, and we had guys that had played 7, 8, 9, 10 years who were really in their prime. But Jackie was just learning to play. But Jackie had something that we didn't have. Now, a lot of people say Jackie had the education. We did too. See, what a lot of people didn't know, 45% of the guys that played in the Negro League were college men. The simple reason was we always trained in a city that had black colleges, and we played the black colleges. So the black colleges were really more or less like our minor leagues. So the guy would play ball in the summer and go back to school in the winter, or go back to teach. That was it. So, but Jackie came. We had been going to a filling station in Oklahoma for 20 years. We'd never gone to the restroom because the sign on the door said, for white men only. So we played that night in that town, and the next morning we get up, we go to the filling station, the same station. The man put the hose in the tank and said, oh, you boys were wonderful like last night as usual, had a good time, and you filled the ballpark up. Jackie gets off the bus, started walking toward the restroom. The man said, boy, where you going? I'm going to the restroom. Boy, you know you can't go to the restroom. Jackie said, take the hose out the tank. Now, the man thought a little because we got a 50-gallon tank on this side. We got a 50-gallon tank on that side. And he's not going to sell that much gas to one customer until we came back there. So know what he said? You boys go to the restroom, but don't stay long. But the gist of that thing was this. From that day on, we never got gas at a filling station. We couldn't go to the restroom. We never played in a town that they didn't have a place for us to stay and to eat. Jackie said, no, you don't have to do that, man. You know what? This is a capitalistic society and money, and you're spending money with these people. You don't have to do these things. We were acclimated to segregation, but not Jackie. And when Branch Rickey signed jacket to that major league contract. That was the beginning of the modern day civil rights movement. Now, I say modern day because the civil rights movement started way down in Egypt land. God needed a man and he called Moses. That's what he did. In Asia, he needed somebody he called Muhammad. Yeah. And in this country, he needed somebody he called Abe Lincoln. Abe Lincoln. Then he reached back and he got some other people that you know. He called Frederick Douglass. He called Sojourner Truth. They're changing all of this stuff. See, when he signed that contract, that was before Brown versus the Board of Education. Yeah. Martin Luther King was a sophomore at Morehouse at the time. That's right. And I tell you what, the lady hadn't moved. She hadn't got in that seat and wouldn't move. No, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So all of this happened. This started the ball to rolling. This started the ball to rolling. It started opening gates in this country that should never been closed, really. It never been closed. Like, I played in the Negro Leagues, and I tell you what, maybe I would have preferred playing with the Kansas City Monarchs other than the New York Yankees, but I should have had that option. The only reason I didn't, because I was this beautiful brown. But you're here to listen to an old man talk about things that was good in his life, things that was bad in his life. But the bad things, we changed them. Yeah. And that's what you are here for. All of the things that I went through, you won't have to go through them. No. And because when you think of these times, you only think about it in your mind that black. Don't you remember many white folk suffered during that time? Many Asian folks suffered. Native Americans suffered during that time. So many things suffered. So many people suffered at that time. But the change came. And I tell you what, in this country, we still got a few fools out there that don't realize that burning a cross in somebody's yard is out of style. Yeah, we got a few of them, but we're going to change those. And when I look out at you young faces out there, the great opportunity that's before you. But you got to be ready. You got to be prepared. That means you got to be educated. And you are educators, you got to educate the children that's coming along. Because one day, I might walk into one of you youngsters out there and walk into your office and say, "Good morning, Mr. Mayor." I walk into another one of your offices and say, "Good morning, Mr. Governor, Mr. Congressman." And one day, I'd like to walk in to one of you young women and walk into the Oval Office and say, "Good morning, Madam President." Because it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And I'm going to live to see it. I'm just 86. And God has been so good to me. Yes. I still have my 5 senses. have all my organs. Some of them still work. So I'm doing okay. But I tell you, this is wonderful for me. I'm going to tell you about a guy that I knew. You've heard all the stories about the great Satchel Paige and calling the infield in, outfield in, and pitching to Josh Gibson, these things. You've heard all those things. I'm going to tell you about a Satchel Paige that I knew and loved. This man, we played Ponce de Leon Park, Atlanta, Georgia, doubleheader that Sunday. Next day we go into Charleston, South Carolina. We get to Charleston that Monday morning before the rooms were ready. And he said, Nancy, he called me Nancy. He said, Nancy, come go with me. I had an idea where he was going. He went down, we go down to the docks in Charleston. And he had a friend there, had an outboard motorboat. Put us in the boat and he took us over to Drum Island. Drum Island is where they used to land the slaves. We stayed over there about 30 minutes, 45 minutes. He said, I got someplace else I want to take you. He took us back to the harbor. He took us into a warehouse. He said, this is where they used to auction off the slaves. Satchel and I, we stood there about 30 minutes, not saying anything to each other. And after the 30 minutes, Satchel finally said, you know what, Nancy? It feels like I've been here before. I said, me too. What he was alluding to was the fact that his grandmother or my grandfather could have been auctioned off right where we're standing. This was the Satchel that I knew and loved, a little deeper than a lot of people thought. This was Satchel Paige, the greatest pitcher that ever lived. And I'm witnessed so much with that man and other people that played. I'm a little boy, Sarasota, and I had seen great baseball all my life. John McGraw, the New York Giants, trained in Sarasota. Up to Tampa, 50 miles north. Miller Huggins, New York Yankees, down south, 70 miles from me. Connie Mack and the Philadelphia Athletics trained there. So I'd seen great baseball all my life. My uncle named Hanley, he was tall and good looking like me. He came to visit us this summer. And the Tampa paper, Tampa Tribune was the great paper, a great sports section. So I'd take the kids out, they'd come to my house, spread the paper out, and we'd talk about the great ball players, and we would go out to practice or play, and I would emulate maybe a Babe Ruth, another guy, Miller Huggins, another guy, Connie Mack. That's what we would do. And I'm telling my uncle about all these great ball players. I said, the greatest ball players in the world. He said, how do you know they're the greatest in the world? I said, they're in the major leagues. He said, well, then I tell you what, I'm coming down here this fall, and I'm going to take you and your daddy someplace, let you see some other ball players, and then you make up your mind who you think the greatest in the world. I said, okay. I'm appeasing old man because I knew I had seen the greatest. I'd seen Ruth, I'd seen Cobb, I'd seen Walter Johnson, you know. He telling me I see somebody else. Anyway, he came that fall. He took us down to West Palm Beach, my dad and me, and at the Royal Poinciana Hotel, great tourist hotel, in Florida, in Palm Beach. And Ruth Foster, he played for that hotel. He represented that hotel. And over at the Breakers Hotel, say on that island, was C.I. Taylor, Indianapolis ABCs. He represented them. And I got a chance to see them play. Now, the baseball that I had seen, Babe Ruth was hitting the home runs and all that. So, actually, you could go out and get a popcorn or pop or whatever you wanted until Babe Ruth or Jimmy Fox or some of those guys came up. But Ruth Foster and C.I. Taylor had 9 men each that could hit you 350 or better, could steal you 100 bases. Yeah, they had that kind of ball club, so you couldn't go out and get peanuts or nothing because they might do something you've never seen before. Really? You could walk him, he'd steal second, he'd steal third, and if you wasn't smart, he'd steal home. So it was that kind of baseball. So, man, when I saw that, I get back to Sarasota. My uncle sent me the Amsterdam News. That was a New York City weekly. And my father subscribed to the Pittsburgh Courier and the Chicago Defender. So now, the paper didn't get to us until around Tuesday. But when we got it, all the kids would come to my house. I'd spread these papers out. Now, I would probably be Ruth Foster. Another guy would be C.I. Taylor. Another guy would be Josh Gibson or Satchel Paige. You know what I mean? This gave me a hope that I never had before, because the only people I've seen making a living playing baseball, they were white. But now I'm looking at these black guys, they making a living playing baseball. Now, there is something for me to do. And I'm feeling good, but there's still a little something back there that I didn't know what it was that kind of bothered me. 1924, they're building a brand new high school in Sarasota, Florida, and I'm running around. I'm going to Sarasota High School. I'm going to Sarasota High School. Grandmama said, "Sit down, boy. Let me talk to you." I said, "Yes, sir." She said, "You aren't going to Sarasota High School." I said, "Why, Grandma?" "Sarasota High School is for white kids." I said, I cried a little. She said, "Don't cry, because I might not live to see it, but you're going to live to see it when all kids will be able to attend Sarasota High School." And I tell you what, just about 3 or 4 years ago, Sarasota High School gave me honorary diploma. And they invited every kid in Sarasota County. With so many kids, they gave it in the football stadium. And, oh man, they were there from all over. And when I walked in, they started singing, "Buck, we're glad you're home. Buck, we're glad you're home." This made me feel good all over. And when I got up to speak, I told them, this is Martin's dream that we are living. Because these kids that were cheering me were white kids, black kids, Native American kids, yeah, cheering old Buck. And it just did so much for my soul that this had happened to me, this old man. But I tell you what, I had gone to school, see, Miss Booker. Miss Booker was the most educated woman in Sarasota County. She taught Booker grammar school. She taught us. And Miss Booker said, "This 8th grade ain't enough. So what I'll do, I'll teach summer school and I'll teach night school. You can come and get a little more." And I did go to Miss Booker. But I worked on the Sarah farm. And why I got the job on the Sarah farm, how I got the job on the Sarah farm, is to be a box boy. The man said it was 5 of us, "Why do you want to be a box boy on Palmer Farm?" And everybody answered. I was the last one. He said, "Well, John, why do you want to be a box boy on Palmer Farm?" I said, "Mister, I'm going to be the best damn box boy you ever had." He said, "You got the job." I was the box boy, and I was tall, big, and box boy, but see, Palmer Farm was a mile long and a half mile wide. I got to put out boxes for all these people to put their celery in. And I was tall, so a box boy used to have a box here and a box here, but I stacked them. I had 2 here, 2 here. I lined that field up. I lined it up. Nobody ever had to say box boy. No, I had it lined up. They paid 75 cents a day, but they paid me $1 a day. I was a good box boy. And one day, my father was a foreman on this farm. One day, I'm behind my boxes eating dinner, and the grown folk on the other side eating their lunch. See? I said, damn, it's got to be something better than this. And it was hot that day. And we get off the truck that night, and we walking home. My daddy said, I heard what you said behind the boxes today. I said, oh, because, he'd never heard me say damn before. And I doubt if I've ever said damn before. But it was hot. And he said, yeah. Say, there's something better than this, son, but you've got to go someplace else to get it. I said, man, where can I go? He said, well, over there where you used to go to school. I'm 18 years old now. Over there where you used to go to school, they got over Hazley's over there. He went to Edward Waters College, and you play ball with him every weekend. Say, why don't you talk with Hazley? Maybe he can get you a scholarship at Edward Waters, and you can go and finish your high school. I called Hazley. Hazley came, and he brought Miss Booker with him. When we got there, and let me tell you about Miss Booker. Well, I told you how smart Miss Booker was. See, Miss Booker couldn't go to the University of Florida to get her master's or her no degree. Mrs. Booker had to go to Columbia. Yeah, and not only that, Miss Booker got those degrees and was working toward her doctor. That was Miss Emma Booker, big, black, and beautiful. I think I had a crush on Miss Booker. But anyway, Miss Booker came, and Hazley called Coach Ox Clemens. Say, I got a kid here, he's a good athlete, and I think he can help your program. And he said, well, one thing about it is he academically sound enough. He said, I'll let you talk to Miss Booker. And Miss Booker said, yes, he can handle it, Coach. They gave me a scholarship to Edward Waters. And now, when I get there, I had never seen so many black kids that's going someplace, gonna be somebody. Oh man, I'm in heaven now. I just love this so much. And here I am. I thought sure I was going into the 9th grade. I took the test and everything. They put me in the 11th grade. That's what Miss Booker had done for me in the 11th grade. I finished my high school at Edward Waters College. I got 2 years of college at Edward Waters College, and I'm a good baseball player now. So the guys would go north every year, play baseball, make some money, and tuition money, come back in the fall to school. So they say, hey, man, they call me Foots. Say, I know you wonder why, but call me Foots and say, Foots, why don't you go north with us and play ball? I said, yeah, I'd like that. So I went north with the Miami Giants. Oh, went all the way into Canada, had a good time, made some money too. When I get back to Miami, the man said, say, why don't you stay down here and play ball with us this winter? I said, oh man, I got to go back to school. He said, let me tell you one thing, boy. Say, you always talk about Miss Booker. How much money does Miss Booker make a month? I said, $60. He said, you made more than that playing with us. You make more than that down here. Say, you think about that. I said, okay. I called Mama that night. I said, Mama, I'd like to stay down here and play ball this winter. She said, boy, you can't stay down there and play ball. You know you got to go back to school. I said, Mama, I'm making more money than Miss Booker. He said, yeah, you making more money than Miss Booker now. I said, but Miss Booker can have this job until she's 75, 80 if she wants to, but what are you going to do? You play ball after you're 35. Some more life there, a whole lot of life. What you going to do? I said, Mama, let me talk to Papa. And you know a man, he's so proud his son playing with the Miami Giants, going all over the country. Yeah. So he said, well, I tell you what, son, you can stay down there this year, but the next year you got to go back to school. I said, yes, sir. So I played that winter in Miami, had a good winter. That summer, I go back north again with them. Now, I'm a very good ball player. When it's time for me to go to school, they wanted me to come to play in Cuba. Uh-oh. Now in Cuba, they're paying me $400 a month. I got to go. So I went to Cuba. Well, the only thing about it is this. When it really told on me, see, I've had a good life. I really have. And when it told on me, see, with the Monarchs, did fine. Then I went to scouting for the Cubs, did fine. Coach for the Cubs, the first black coach in the major leagues. Ain't that a shame? Baseball, 75 years old, and I'm the first black coach. But anyway, so I had done all right. But after I'd worked for the Cubs 7, 8 years, the general manager died. And Mr. Wrigley said, I'm going to pick a general manager from the organization. Okay. Had 5 guys, and old Buck was one of the 5. Now, I knew more about the Cubs system than anybody there. Not because I was smarter than anybody there, but what happened, I went to spring training and worked the major league team. When the major league team left, I worked the AAA team. When the AAA team left, I worked with the AA team. When they left, I worked with the teams from A right on through D. I knew every ball player, every signal, and I knew everything about the Cubs system. So out of these 5 guys, it got down to 2, and old Buck was one of the 2. I didn't get the job, and not because I was black either. I didn't get that job. The man that got the job had his BS from the University of Chicago, master's from University of Pittsburgh, working toward his doctorate. He got the job. See, I had the baseball lure, but listen. See, the general manager of a baseball club might have breakfast with the mayor. He might have lunch with the governor. He could have dinner with the president of the United States. See, I had the baseball lure, but I didn't have this. Had I had that piece of paper, had I been, you know what I mean, had I been allowed to attend the Sarasota High School, the University of Florida, maybe I'd have had that piece of paper. So that's why I'm so proud of all of you. You got that paper? Get as much as you can get, because we need you. I live in the ghetto in Kansas City. I need you. Not only in the ghetto of Kansas City, they need you in Overland Park in Kansas City, which is the suburbs. Yeah, we need people like you. Because what you're going to do, you're going to teach others. Yes, to excel. And I know, and I tell kids, you don't have to be an athlete. And I don't want you. See, my role model was my daddy, John O'Neill, 6'4", 210, fine-looking rascal. But let me tell you, you should be the role model for your son and your daughter. You don't have to have Rodman to be the role model for your child. No. No. That is your job. Raise them right. raise them. Yes. So they can be of service to humanity. See, the people say, Buck, I know you hate the things that happen to you and your kind. I say, think about it as I don't know how to hate. I never learned hate. I never learned hate. We played the Major League All-Stars and actually we won the majority of the games from the Major League All-Stars. Not that we were better, but I tell you why we won the majority of the ball games from the Major League All-Stars. The Major League All-Stars were only making a payday. But we, in the Negro League, we had something to prove. We had to prove that they weren't superior because they were white, and we weren't inferior because we were black. So what we did, we stretched that single into a double. We stretched that double into a triple. We stretched that triple into a home run. That's what we did. This is why we won the majority of the ball games, because we had something to prove. And we did prove that. And that's the same thing in life. Don't ever feel inferior to anyone. No. Don't feel inferior to the Christian because you're a Jew. Don't feel inferior to the Jew because you're Mohammed, whatever. No, never. You are an American living in the greatest country on earth. Don't you let anyone tell you differently. But this hate thing, I hate cancer. Cancer killed my mother. My wife died in November with cancer. I hate cancer. Yeah. I hate AIDS. A friend of mine, 35 years old, died with AIDS a couple of months ago. I hate AIDS. I hate what the Klan will do. I hate what the skinhead will do. But I can't hate the man. I can't hate God's creature. No. Love. That's what I live by. Love. I love Jehovah, my God, with all my heart, with all my soul, and with all my mind. And I love you, my neighbor, as I love myself. I want you to do something for me. Hold hands with the person next to you. Everybody. All over, you children up there. Hold hands. Yeah. Miss Photographer, grab a hand. And I want you to sing after me. The greatest thing in all my life is loving you. The greatest thing in all my life is loving you. The greatest thing in all my life is loving you. The greatest thing in all my life is loving you. Thank you so much.